Hello there. We are the facilities branch here at Kentucky Department of Education. There are a few items to know. I just want to go over. There is a Q&A tab at the top of your screen that you can select to submit any questions. All questions will be reviewed at the end. My plan for this slideshow is to last about 30 minutes. We will see if I can keep that goal. There also will be a survey emailed to you after the webinar. Please take the time and let us know how we did. And the surveys will be up for about 1 week. We are the facilities branch, and this is our 5th webinar. We started doing these in August, and if you missed any, they are uploaded to our facilities webpage on KDE's website. Introductions. Dr. Robbie Fletcher is our commissioner. Matt Ross is our associate commissioner. Our division director is Che Ritter, and we have a new assistant director as of March 2025, Marshall Smith. Our branch manager, Greg Dunbar, is retiring as of December 31st. His last day was November the 26th, and Marshall Smith is our acting branch manager. Going into our project managers, we have Gary Least, we have Marcus Highland, Teresa Hester, and John Gilbert, who's going to be co-presenting with me today. And then you have me. I'm Tanisha King. I'm your FACPAC contact. That is my email address. Just email me if you have any questions. All right. Let's get past these. Getting into the presentation summary. This is our presentation list. I'm not going to go over the summary. There are 2 pages. All right. Does my project require a BG1? Is it time for FACPAC? If you can say yes to any of the following reasons, then it's time to create a project in FACPAC. When a job requires a design professional, when removing need from the facilities plan, when there is a physical change to the space of an existing building, when utilizing restricted funds, or when doing a property transaction. Now, this presentation is going to focus more on construction, so we will not be discussing property today. We may reference some things, but that's it. All right, what is FACPAC? FACPAC is basically facilities planning and construction. It's a software application within Microsoft SharePoint system. We will be going over these FACPAC forms on a high level. So just to let you know, we're going to go over each one of them, just not in depth. The FACPAC forms listed here are your project form, your BG1 form, your contract, purchase order, change order, BG4, and the BG5. Now, we will touch base on the BG2s and BG3s, but we're not going to go into those. So that's why that's not listed there. A project may use all of these forms, but most will just use a few. All right, FACPAC access. When changes occur to FACPAC, the district or third party should contact us at KDE. FACPAC access is granted based on the request we receive from the districts or from your third party users. So there's 2 different types of access, district roles and third party roles. And it's important to let us know when your staff changes, and so we can get that updated as most recent as possible. All right, FACPAC welcome page. This is your home page. On the left, you see user guide. User guide gives a step-by-step process for FACPAC, but you must have FACPAC access to get to that user guide. When you have any questions beyond the user guide, that's what FACPAC support is. So you want to click the FACPAC support button, and that's going to open what's called a user request form. And that's how you make an inquiry to us or ask us a question. I want to bring reference to the center of the home page. You can also click user request form there to get directly to that page. And also, as I stated earlier, our trainings that are on the website, that's a direct link to that page on the home page. So if you have any questions, just let us know. All right, this is what the FACPAC user request form looks like. There are 3 selection types: general inquiry, inventory management, and user management. So the general inquiries, if you just have a question. Inventory management is if you have a building that needs to be removed or added in FACPAC. And user management is when you want us to add, change, or delete a user. Now, the way that I've done my presentation, just to let you all know, I have a lot of visuals here. So I'm going to go off of the pictures. The slides that have words are what I'm describing in the pictures. So I'm going to skip over those, but they're on there. So if you needed to reference it later. All right, now it's time to create a project. And again, this is your FACPAC homepage. So when you're ready to create a project, you're going to click that Create Project in the center. I have these other items highlighted because I want to bring reference to them. My forms, that is where you as a user, any form that you create in FACPAC is going to show in that list on your dashboard. So any form you create will show on that home page. If you don't create the form, it's not going to show there. So you would need to go to the processing by form on the left column tab to get to any other forms. My document submissions, this is where you upload your documents such as your architect agreements, your BG2s, your BG3s, things of that nature. So when we say upload your documents, this is what we mean, upload them here. And once you upload them, they will show under the upload in processing. And once you submit them, they will go to your project manager. Now this slide I'm not going to go over, but this details some of the items that you would upload under my document submissions. I just wanted this visual here for you all in case you needed it later. All right, now on to the project creation. Your title is going to be generic. So when you can create the project, you want to change that title to whatever that project is. The BG number is going to be automated, so the system's going to give you that number, and every project has a different BG number. Your project type is going to provide two choices. You have construction and you have property, which is not here, listed here. And once you select construction, you'll need to choose a delivery method. This is also where you add your third-party consultants, and you can remove them from here. If you don't know them at this moment, you can always come back and edit this later. Just make sure you save your data. All right. Right, on to the BG1. From your project homepage, this is your FACPAC project homepage, basically. Once you create the project, this is what it looks like when it's done. Your title that says project, new project, the blue portion, that's where your title is going to show. That stays blue throughout the entire process. I want to bring reference to that link that anywhere in the project, you can double click that link to get to this FACPAC project form. This is also where you create your BG1, and you would just double click on that create BG1 button, and that would start that process. I also want to bring reference to the edit item in the top left corner. That is where you edit the forms. That's also where you make attachments. So when you print your BG1 for your signatures and you need to attach it, you need to click edit item and then attach file, and that will link that to that online form, which is very different from what I went over just a moment ago as far as my document submissions. So when we tell you to attach a form, we mean attach it this way. When we tell you to upload it, we mean to upload to my document submissions. I'm going to go back. I also want to reference the tabs here. You've got your BG1 tab, your checklist, your contracts, and your project summary, and your BG5 tab. So these are the tabs that you will click on when you need to go throughout your project. Right, this is what a blank BG1 looks like. So your project information will carry over once you create this form, and you fill it out as you need. This is what the scope information looks like. So you want to add your scope, which is basically detailing a narrative of the project. This is your financial plan, starting with the probable cost. And this is the financial plan listing the funds available. Now, once you're ready and you've completed this form, make sure you save your data. I can't stress that enough. Print it. And once you print it, that's when it's going to populate that signature page that you need to take to your board to get your signatures. Make sure that if you have residual funds as well, want to highlight this area. There is a drop-down menu that is here when you have residual funds. You cannot select residual funds on any project that is still open. There must be a BG5 on file closing that project out for them to populate under residual funds. Otherwise, if you have any technical issues or any questions about that, please let me know. We have had some issues with that. All right, moving on. This is what it looks like when you've got multiple BG1s on file. I wanted to bring this screen. This screen is very important because this screen is what hangs up most districts. I have highlighted a saved BG1. That saved BG1 is going to hinder you from closing this project out. Now you'll be able to move on throughout FACPAC and fill out other forms. But as you notice, the Create BG5 button is grayed out. And the reason is because of this saved document on file. So make it a point to go back to your BG1s to see if all of them show approved. As long as they all show approved, you can move on. Project can have multiple BG1s, as you can see in this example. Right, BG2 and BG3. John, would you like to give a brief explanation of these?
Sure, be happy to, Tanisha. Yeah, BG2s and BG3s for school districts, you typically don't have to fill these particular forms out. Your design professionals, your construction managers, your consultants, if you will, fill these out. You'll notice that they're not in PAC, but if you have contractual obligations, be it from regulatory, statutory, or contractual, these two forms I'm just going to inform you about for those who are coming from the district background that may not see these a lot. A BG2 is more like your spec form. It is more of like what we call in the design profession like a design development, where the design professionals come to you and show you drawings of that new school or that 2-classroom addition, a substantial project. It's a 4 or so page list that gives you things like metal roof versus a shingled roof versus a some type of other type of roof, what type of HVAC system. It gets into the materiality and the details, and you as a district sign off on that, just like the design professional and construction manager signs off on those things. Has some alternate options and a whole host of other things. It's project information in the middle of the design phases, and it's updating your board. So it's an important form. Just understand that your consultants fill that out. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's something that you should be seeing in the midst of design, and you should be presenting that to your board so that they get a short form, if you will, of the general materiality and components and other information like alternates, like I mentioned earlier, for them to look at. A BG3, just real quickly, is a cost opinion form. BG1s have all your costs and your funds. The BG3 is an Excel form, not the design professionals and construction managers can fill out, sign off on, alerting and informing during the design phases. Hey, we've increased scope. The market is such that prices are increasing even more. And this is a form that they can take to your board and say, hey, we have a slight increase or we have a big increase based on our professional review of your project. And at certain phases of a project, there are some contractual requirements that have them try to update that. This BG3 form helps your board in a concise way see some of that breakdown. Your design professionals and construction managers can help you with that. So as a district, don't worry about these two forms in terms of filling them out. As a district, you want to talk to your consultants so that they get you that information during the design phases to better inform you to fill out the things like a revised BG1 if you need to increase funds for a project. That's all I got, Tanisha, on that. Move on
Thank
to
you,
the
John.
BG4, I guess.
Contract. All right. This is the contract view to create a contract. Generally, before construction begins on a project, the post-bid information is put into FACPAC. John, would you like to explain the all or nothing approach with the contracts? Change orders and purchase orders, that is?
Yeah, this is a good point, Tanisha. And yes, I forgot. I'm totally skip. I'm going straight from BG1 to practically closing contracts out. We haven't even put them in the system yet, have we? Um, yes, this is an all or nothing approach. The whole process is linear, and when FACPAC was created back in 2017, it is a very linear process from a regulatory standpoint, but it's also in FACPAC a linear process. Just like Tanisha mentioned about the BG1 and doing things in a certain order, you have to get all these things in an order. And if you as a district decide to put contracts in our system, you may do so. It is a district choice if you've adopted what's called HB 678. And most of you are familiar with that. It is being extended by HB 727. You can maintain your contracts, your purchase orders, your change orders, and any kind of contractual changes at the local level and not put it in the system. We still get a lot of districts that have their design professionals and construction managers input this data still today. So that is a choice, that is an option. I will tell you that finance officers can use this as a resource to kind of double check their Munis information on their end. Don't ask us about Munis. We are not Munis professionals here. But I know that finance officers look at that. If they see contracts and numbers in here that are not aligning to what they're giving totals, it's you can use this information because you're having the information put in here. But if it's put in here, it's an all or nothing approach. If you have contracts, all contracts go in there. It means if you have a CM and you got 10 contracts, you put 10 in there. If it's a GC project, you put the one in there. And that will vary depending on your project. If the board decided to do purchase orders, those have separate agreements to them, still part of the contractor's work, but you would also input the purchase orders individually in here. And there are summary things in here. I don't know that we're going to touch on summaries today, but they add a lot of that up and can be a nice resource for school districts to use. Also, change orders. Anytime you have a change order to a contract or a purchase order, you need to put all that in, because at the end of the day, when you go closing the contracts out with BG4s that we're going to touch on here shortly, or you close the project out, you want your totals to start matching up. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling your hair out and being like, why do these things not add up? If you're going through the system, and not only our system, but double checking and backtracking to the where you're actually paying your bills through your Munis systems, uh, you know, you can additionally use this resource. Like I said, if you decide as a team, meaning the district and your consultants, that you don't want to put this information in, you could technically just give us a BG1 and a BG5 at the end of the project and everything else be at the local level. That is a district decision. I highly encourage the district, the CMs, and the design professionals to work together to make that decision at the very beginning of the project. Like I said, I'm going to stress it again. You're not going to get tired of hearing it. It's an all or nothing approach. Once you put it in and we start doing approvals, you've got to start really putting them all in. And it can be a good thing if it's helping all parties along the way. Back to you, Tanisha.
Thank you, John. Also, a contract cannot be created until an initial BG1 has been approved. And upon completion of the construction contracts, you need a BG4 to close those out, along with the change order, purchase order, and the purchase orders. So if you don't need a contract, then that means you skip this process and you go straight to a BG5. All right, this is what the contract view looks like when you've got multiple contracts. This is probably the most questions that I get from districts. Why are my buttons grayed out? Why can't I create a BG5? And it is because if you've noticed, in processing, there's 4 contracts pending. Completed process means there's 1 contract that's approved. That completed processing means that's the only project that's ready for BG4. The other 4 still need the attention. If you see no data, that means there's data needed. So the change orders, the purchase orders, and your BG4s will essentially come from this screen, basically. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But again, I wanted to show you all what your contract screen looks like. And once they're all under completed processing and all show a BG4, then the BG5 button will no longer be grayed out and you could move forward with that. There are 2 steps of contract submission process. So the first step is submitting the proposal for it to show the status of a approved proposed. So that means the proposal needs to be uploaded. A copy of that proposal needs to be uploaded to that contract. The second step is where you submit a copy of the executed version and you're attaching that to the online form. And that's what gets you the approved final, which is what you see here with the approved dates. And once you've got those dates, you can move forward. All right, on to purchase orders. As John said, your consultants normally complete these. So you can skip this if it's unnecessary and you're not going to fill these out. You would go on to your BG5, as I said before. However, the system will not allow you to start a BG4 if any of these are pending. John, anything further to add on the purchase order?
Yeah, like Tanisha said, I mentioned earlier, oftentimes the construction manager or architect will fill these things out. A majority of the time they will. It is okay if the district makes that decision. That's something that as a team, you all need to decide. I've just not had the experience of seeing a lot of districts fill these out. It's not to say that you can't. You're perfectly capable to do it. And on occasion, we probably do have a couple of districts that probably have done that in the past. May impact agreements or how you as a team work together. So again, these are kind of early stage things, but it's one of those details to kind of talk through on the front end of a project of whose responsibility of filling these things out are along the way. Like I said, it's usually the construction manager or the architect, but on occasion, there's nothing that would exclude the district from doing it if they had that opportunity to do so.
And if you're going to create a purchase order, you want to click that purchase order, create purchase order button to start that process. This is the purchase order view, which is similar to the contract view, which is also similar to the BG1 view. So as you can see, they all kind of look the same in how they align on the screen, and they'll show you the amount, the submitted date, and your approval date. So as long as in this particular example, all of these purchase orders are approved, so nothing's grayed out, it allows you to go forward. But if one of these didn't have approved date, it wouldn't, that create BG4 button would be grayed out also. Oh, let me go back. Now, this is a few extra items I wanted to add on here for purchase orders. As I said, no further edits can be made on purchase orders after they've been approved. Furthermore, no further edits can be made on any form in FACPAC. Once your forms get approved and they show that approval date, cannot go back and edit them. So that's why it's very important to make sure your data is correct. Another thing I want to focus on with the purchase orders, because I get this question a lot. When you're filling your purchase orders, make sure you click the add item button at the end so that your total populates for the entry. Otherwise, it's going to say 0. And when it says 0, then it may not balance out in the end. And once you get that approved, you can't go back in and populate that figure. So it's very important to make sure to focus on that and make sure that entry populates accordingly. All right, moving on to the change order. And this is the change order supplemental information. These are changes to contract agreements post bid. And so, John, anything further to add on a change order?
I don't think so here. I mean, just be mindful that, AIA agreements or other agreements that districts may decide, typically AIA and the KDE forms in particular, but, those are the source documents and there are AIA change order forms that we're not going to get into here. But this is supplemental information. And this is part of when you go through the process in our systems to help fill a lot of this stuff out. These also had signature lines to them. But again, if you're a district that decides not to go through this process, you won't have access to this to be able to do that particular supplemental form. Similarly, like the purchase orders, but some districts have their own purchase order stuff as well.
Thank you, John. And it's also important to know that you have change orders to your contracts and change orders to your purchase orders. So they are different. Moving on, we're going to go to the BG4s. This screen. Now, we seen this screen a moment ago when I was referencing the contracts, but I wanted to come back to this screen because this is important. At the bottom of it, you notice I have no BG4 found highlighted. That's not a link that you can click on. That is just for informational purposes, letting you know, hey, this contract's not closed. So every contract should have its own BG4. And if it's needed, it should show this on this screen and let you know. So to get to the BG4, you will have to open your contract. And to open the contract, you double click on that action button. And that's where we're going to go next. So once you click on that contract button, it opens the contract up to where you can create your BG4. So you cannot create the BG4 from the FACPAC project form, which is the homepage as I call it. So to get to that FACPAC project homepage, you would double click on the title as I told you earlier in the presentation. So when you're ready, you create a BG4 for all contracts, you get them printed and you get them signed, attach it to the online version and submit to KDE. Right. Now, BG4 construction costs are summarized and automated from the contract information in the system. Verification of required approvals provides dates of all official closeout requirements like building code, environmental, etc. Closeout information provides documentation on warranties, trainings, record drawings, lien releases, and etc. So that's pretty much the BG4 in a nutshell. Now we're going to move on to the BG5, which is the closeout process. All previous forms must be approved once you get to this point. If you realize you need a new BG1 or you need another contract or another change order, or I need another purchase order, you've got to delete this BG5 and go back. Now, generally, you're not going to go back and create a purchase order or change order at this point because your contract should be closed out. So I only say that because in case you need to go back and maybe add another contract in. But either way, you can't go backwards. FACPAC, when we say FACPAC is a linear process, this is what we mean. You do the one, you do the revisions, you do your contracts if necessary, you do your BG4s, close those contracts out, and then you get to your BG5s. So keep in mind, KDE can only assist with the information provided in FACPAC. So on older projects, if there's no information within FACPAC, our assistance is only limited. However, we're here for any questions or advice, but it is totally the district's discretion on how they choose to handle their projects. Who completes the BG5? Only the district. So third-party consultants cannot create a BG5, just like they cannot create an initial BG1, nor can they create the project. So those three key items have to be done by the district. And when you do create the BG5, this is the final act to formally close this entire project. So that's why it's important to make sure that all of your data in here is correct, because you cannot go back once you close your BG5 out. Once you've submitted the BG5 for approval and it gets processed and it shows that approval date, that project is formally closed and it's done. And open it back up. And remember to update your building inventory through the Kentucky Facilities Inventory and Classification System, otherwise known as KFIX. Now, I've also included a couple images of blank BG5s, and I wanted to give John a chance to go over these a little bit further in depth, but that pretty much concludes my portion.
Sure. Thanks, Tanisha.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to kind of go through the BG5 here, just very briefly. You'll notice at the top, she mentioned like the gross square footage and the inventory update information. That's at the top. There's 3 items there. If you're construction, you should be able to fill out all 3 of those. The gross square footage, if you had that 2-classroom addition or that brand new school everybody's loving to move into, or by this time you probably already have moved into if you're doing a BG5, put that square footage of the building in there. the substantial completion date, which you're probably going to find for your BG4s if you're a school district, or call your architect or CM up for the more definitive one, especially if you've got multiple contracts. There might be different completion dates for certain contractors under a CM, but there's one big overarching substantial completion date to kind of turn it over to you, the school district. Fill that out as well. Also, the inventory update, like she said, is KFIX. This form really, though, focuses on the finances. And we kind of touched on the whole linear thing. Tanisha and I probably beat that to death here in this presentation today, and rightly so. But when it comes to this, the BG4 is about contracts and construction and the end of construction. The BG5 is about project. And your finance officers, and only the district can fill this out, are going to want to pay particular attention to this. Of course, facility directors, superintendents, and the like can fill this out, but this is where you really take a look at your project and try to reconcile it, just like you reconcile your checkbook, if you will, at the end of the day, to close this project out. Because once it's processed, there's no turning back. We can't make adjustments. The goal is that you want to have a difference that gives you either a $0 value or a residual value, basically money left over. You don't want to show that your project is in the red. So there's 3 columns. The first column is the most recent BG1 approved in the system. And I know we're showing a bunch of zeros here, and that's okay. But if you had a new school or a roof replacement or whatever, those BG1 costs that are on the most recent one typically post bid, sometimes a little bit later. If you want to show interest, that's a whole other topic for another day. But you can put that in there on that. That's automated. The current BG1 is automated. You don't have to fill out that first column of zeros. The second column, which is the cost, and we slid here to funds, is also the fund source utilized. Both of those are where you fill it out. And this is where you need to get with your finance officer, whether if someone else is filling it out, that's completely fine. But I think the finance officer really needs to take a moment to really look at this as well. This is where you show the costs on the previous slide and the fund source utilized and the amounts. And when you do that in practice, and I'm making a general statement when I say this, when it comes to the fund source utilized in that middle column, and let's say you got 5 fund sources, the most restricted one is where the residual value should be. So let me say that again. If you have SFCC, which is the most restricted state fund typically on this form, and you've got several items, you utilize the others first. The most restrictive is what usually ends up being the residual. That is the general rule of thumb. I'm not saying that there are exceptions out there, but that's typically the route to go. So the final fund source, you fill out that middle row. The third one is an automated, it adds and subtracts the difference. So when you go through and you fill these things out, it will give you a minus, which in this instance means that you have residual funds. It's actually a plus thing. I know that's confusing. My finance officers out there probably makes more sense to them than everybody else, but that's the difference. The negative in front of it tells you that you have leftover monies on those particular line items. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but the bottom line, and kind of go to the next slide, Tanisha. When you sum up the cost, the first page, the current BG1 cost, the final project cost, the one that you filled out, and the difference, that gray bar at the bottom of that one should equal the gray bar at the bottom of the funds. So that if you had that $85 million new school project, it should be down to the penny. Those numbers should be adding up and equaling each other. If you see the yellow highlights, those 2 numbers from cost to funds should match to show the difference. Basically, don't forget that costs are actual costs. Fund source utilized are actually the checks you wrote. And then the difference is what you budgeted or had funds available for from the BG1. So you're basically adding and subtracting line items and getting an net result. And what's shown on the difference under total funds is what automates into the remaining residual value. And when this is processed, if you have a residual value, then in the future, you'll be able to select this BG number to show residual on a future project. The total you will not have to worry about because you'll fill in the total, because over time, if you accrued interest on it, it's a restricted fund, you'll be able to put that new total in there later. We don't deal with interest after this project is closed. That is a district thing through a munis system and financial experts, not facility experts like ourselves. So with that, I think I'm done, Tanisha.
You are. We've got that early question, and I'm going to pull that up now.
All right. Tanisha, through these webinars, just to kind of inform everybody and to, I guess, pique everybody's interest, she's beginning to ask people, what are some preliminary questions you want to ask us? Now, these sort of go along the lines of the FACPAC questions that we have today. But if we get questions ahead of time, we will try to show them and answer those first. And the two we got for today are on the screen. Should district architects, GMs, CMs continue to utilize construction documents, templates, and fee guidelines available on the KDE website, despite changes that have taken place related to 678? In fact, 160 has expired. It's an excellent question. That is a district to district decision, number one. Number two, yes, 160 is currently not in effect. However, that doesn't exclude districts from following the law when it comes to statutory requirements. 160 from a construction standpoint as a process is we use as a guideline. We still have, I don't know, 6 to 8 districts out there that have not adopted 678. We utilize as a guideline to be the KDE approval on behalf of that district, just as if 160 is still in effect. Those who have adopted 678, the board approves these things as if they've reviewed them along those lines. We know that 160 as a regulation adhered to statutory requirements up until that particular time. Anything that has changed since 2022, I can't really speak to in terms of significant changes from what 160 was, but I can speak to it based on a basic guideline up till that time. I would recommend that people use that as a guideline and a baseline. I would recommend that you use the information that we have, but your particular project, you need to get with your general counsel and your team and make decisions on a project by project basis at the district level to see what works best for you and is what is still legal. Also, you have to remind yourself, are you a bid law district or a model procurement district? All these things come into play. You can continue to utilize the things that we have, but if you veer off that, we have a harder time assisting you along the way because that's not standards that we're privy to it, if you will. If you don't put the stuff in the system, we don't know what it says. If you don't utilize the basic documentation, it restricts our ability to assist when you have questions along the way, which we're more than happy to try to assist along the way. So going to the next question. Additionally, we noted from recent published RFP from a district, which included a statement that there was no predetermined fee schedule provided by KDE for CM as constructor services, stating that the district allowed for negotiation of fee amount. I don't know the project, and I'm not going to speak to specifics on a project or a specific RFP for a particular district, not knowing that. So I can't answer that based on the specific project. I will say that you can still get on our website. You will still see CM and an architect engineer fee schedule listed. They reference 160. I will tell you that some CM has statutory language, but both reference 160. Both are on our website. The CM does have mention of CM constructor, but I can't say that it is relevant to anything that's happened after 2022 in particular, and especially when it was no longer in effect a little bit earlier than that. With that, are there any other questions? Who are our question guru? Marcus, Teresa?
Yeah, we don't have any questions at the moment. John, I might add to the question about the schedules.
Mm-hmm.
The history of those schedules, it has always been that they're a recommendation as a guideline. There has always been, and there still is, the option for the district to negotiate those fees. So those fee schedules are not etched in stone. So on both sides, the consultant as well as the owner, it's when you enter into those contracts, you're mutually agreeing to the terms and conditions. So by all means, you should be either establishing that fee schedule or if you're not using the ones that John mentioned that are on the website, you would be affixing the mutually agreed schedules to those contracts. And the same thing about the templates, even with the expiration of 4160. Those standard AIA documents reference many of these standard documents. So if you're not using them, you need to be very mindful that the contract language references them. So if you find yourself in a arbitration litigation situation, you need to be keenly aware that the contracts that were entered into typically will reference the the processes to be deployed and the documents to be used. So if you're not going to use these standard documents that have been used historically, you need to change your contract language to represent how you're going to conduct your business.
Yeah, very, very good response there, Marcus. Uh, those fee guidelines are, I mean, that's just it. They are guidelines, and there's so many additional services or services that maybe someone's not providing that would impact that. You don't just necessarily automatically go to the straight line. This is what it is. Sit down with your consultant as a school district and walk through it. I mean, I know it's wonderfully boring paperwork and contract and stuff like that. I get it, but it's very important. I mean, you're going to have a relationship with your CM, your architect, and the school district on capital construction projects for a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more than that if you're doing a new school on this project. So be upfront, walk through the paperwork, take the time to know what expectations there are between all parties as you move forward. And again, that's a good note, Marcus, that these are guidelines and all the intricate details you need to kind of square away as you move forward on a project before you sign that dotted line. Anything else? Anybody?
Still
Any
no questions.
out there? Come on,
All
give us a
right.
challenging question, people.
And as always, if you don't have any questions today, you can, or you realize you have a follow-up question later today or tomorrow, you can always email me or the team and I
We
will forward it.
it looks like we have a question on design build.
Yeah, it just
Scott
came in.
Yeah. Says, can you all touch on the design build delivery method and if school boards are able to enter into DB contracts? If so, how do they show that on the BG1?
That's a question that I think I would need to know more information. And I don't know from a design build standpoint that I'm going to answer that this time. I mean, our focus obviously was FACPAC and generalized questions and fee schedules. There's that's something that I think, I mean, Marcus, do you want to add to that or shift gears
Sure.
on that?
I mean, it's very similar to the conversations earlier. So all of our processes are still following the now expired 4160. 4160 does not include any language about design build as a project delivery method. So as such, those are not integrated into our software as any other contract delivery method for that matter. So now with regards to the provisions in 727 to allow districts to enter into other kind of contracts, things of that nature, well, they would do so at the review and approval of their council, not KDE. And with regards to the BG1 being updated, there's no mechanism for us to update any contract delivery method beyond the ones that have already been historically approved because we aren't doing that.
Can I add here, it looks like Greg sent a note in and said to reference the ARC memo regarding design build. So there is an ARC memo,
Yeah,
an
he's
architect's memo on our website that does touch on it. So
yeah, and I'll just do
thank you,
the
Greg.
same. I'm just going to defer to, and I don't have it at the tip of my tongue. I want to say it's
Yeah, I'm trying to remember
55
what
or
number.
54.
Yeah, I can't, it's,
Yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to look.
they're labeled as they're listed. So Scott, if you want to take a look at those ARC memos, there is one that addresses design build. Any other questions? And thank you, Greg.
All right, I guess we'll hang out here for a minute and see if any other questions come in.
Yeah, that was memo 57, by the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I checked it
ARC
too.
memo
Pretty
57.
fast. Yeah, ARC memo design build delivery. It's issued August 28th.
Yeah,
It's
I
at
knew
the
it was
very
recent.
bottom of the list right now. Yeah, there are certain ones that we can't particularly adjust or, that memo, I think, pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No more questions
Yeah.
as of now.
Right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you all for your interest and participation.
Thank you all.